They expected the human princess to flee. She chose to fight. The wind whispered across the high towers of the royal city, carrying the scent of iron and wildflowers, a reminder of both the human ingenuity that built these cities and the fragile beauty of the world they had carved from raw stone. Many in the Galactic Council expected the young princess to be timid, to hide behind advisors and bodyguards when threats appeared. They thought she would flee at the first sign of danger, but Alara had no such plans. For weeks, intelligence reports had arrived in waves, each more concerning than the last. The Varkari, a coalition of alien empires known for their merciless conquests and strict honor codes, had sent envoys with demands. They wanted humanity to surrender their planet, their fleets, and their independence. If the humans refused, the Varkari promised swift annihilation. The galactic rumor mills whispered that the humans were naive, that a fledgling species could not possibly survive against the might of the Varkari. The council expected fear. They expected panic. They expected a princess who would run. Alara's lips curved in a small, knowing smile. She understood the expectation, and she intended to shatter it. Inside the palace, the great hall buzzed with tension. Human advisors, military officers, and diplomats moved through the room, their faces lined with worry. Maps of star systems and battle formations covered the long tables. Holographic projections hovered over the surfaces, glowing with the red and blue symbols of human and alien fleets. Alara walked past them, her presence commanding without a word. Despite her youth, she carried the air of authority that demanded attention. The room fell quiet as she approached the central table. "Report," she said simply, her voice calm but sharp. The head advisor, an older man named Merek, stepped forward. "Your Highness, the Varkari fleet is massive. Estimates suggest their capital ships outgun ours 10-1. Their strike teams are highly trained, and their battle strategies are refined over centuries of conquest." He paused, lowering his gaze. "They do not negotiate. They conquer. If we attempt resistance, the losses will be catastrophic." Alara studied the projections, her mind moving faster than anyone else in the room. She noted the patterns in the Varkari formations, the gaps in their deployment, the way their ships maintained rigid lines that favored brute force over adaptability. Her fingers traced a path along the holographic star map. "They are confident," she said. "They underestimate us because they believe we will panic. They believe we are weak." The council murmured among themselves. Merek frowned. "Your Highness, with respect, we are talking about survival. They will not hesitate to destroy everything if provoked." Alara turned her gaze to the fleet projections. "Then we will not provoke them recklessly. We will respond with precision, with strategy, with humanity's greatest strength, adaptability. We are not weak. We are clever, resourceful, and unpredictable. That is what terrifies empires like the Varkari." The advisors exchanged glances, unsure whether to admire her courage or question her recklessness. Alara did not wait for their approval. She moved to the communications console and activated a secure line to the Planetary Defense Command. "Commander Leora," Alara said, her tone firm. "Fortify the orbital defenses. Adjust the energy shields to variable frequency. I want the perimeter fleet in 3 strategic layers, and each layer must be capable of independent maneuvers." "Yes, Your Highness," Leora replied, her voice steady but tinged with awe. "We will prepare immediately." Alara turned her attention to another channel, this one connected to human intelligence operatives on the Varkari worlds. "Deploy the reconnaissance units. I want detailed reports on their ships, their patrol patterns, and any weaknesses in their formations. And do not approach them openly. We move like shadows. We observe. We learn." The council watched in silence. Even the most seasoned advisors could not help but be impressed. Alara was not just a figurehead. She was a strategist, a leader, and perhaps most importantly, a human unafraid to embrace her species' potential. Hours passed as the preparations continued. Alara moved through the war room, reviewing reports, asking questions, and making adjustments. She spoke with engineers about experimental weapon systems, questioned diplomats about potential allies, and consulted with veteran soldiers about tactics. Every detail mattered. Every decision was deliberate. She did not allow fear to dictate her actions. She let intelligence and courage guide her. As the sun set fully, the first Varkari envoys arrived. Massive ships descended into orbit, their dark hulls reflecting the fading light. The Varkari ambassador, a towering figure with translucent skin and glowing eyes, was escorted into the palace for the first time in centuries. The humans expected tension, the Varkari expected awe or fear. Instead, they found Alara standing tall, her posture unyielding, her gaze unwavering. "You speak for a species you believe to be weak," the ambassador said, his voice resonating with a strange, musical timbre. "Why do you not tremble before us?" Alara met his gaze calmly. "Because we do not tremble," she replied. "We do not believe ourselves to be weak. We do not surrender. We do not flee. Humanity survives because we adapt, we endure, and we fight when necessary." The ambassador's eyes narrowed, clearly surprised by her audacity. Around them, human diplomats watched in silent tension. Alara's words carried no threat, yet they radiated power. She understood that confidence alone could unsettle even the most seasoned conquerors. Over the following days, Alara oversaw the training of elite human strike teams. She drilled them not only in combat but in unconventional tactics, teaching them to exploit weaknesses, think creatively under pressure, and act unpredictably. She emphasized that humans were never to rely solely on brute strength. Their advantage was intelligence, adaptability, and heart. Meanwhile, intelligence reports revealed cracks in the Varkari fleet's command structure. Rivalries among their leaders, overconfidence in their technological superiority, and rigid battle doctrines made them vulnerable. Alara's mind worked tirelessly, piecing together these observations into a larger strategy. She began drafting contingency plans, each one designed to turn the Varkari's assumptions against them. On the eve of the first confrontation, Alara walked alone through the palace gardens. The air was cool, and the night sky shimmered with stars. She thought of her ancestors, of humans who had survived against impossible odds on countless worlds. She felt the weight of expectation, but also the fire of purpose. She knew the galaxy doubted her species. She knew they expected her to flee, but she would not. She would fight not just for survival, but to show the universe the strength of humanity. The first Varkari ships approached the planet's orbit at dawn. Their movements were deliberate, confident, and meant to intimidate. Alara stood on the observation deck of the command ship, her hand resting lightly on the railing. Beside her, Commander Leora spoke quietly. "They expect resistance, but not this," Leora said. Alara smiled faintly. "Then let us give them what they do not expect." With a signal from Alara, the human fleet moved into formation. Energy shields flared, engines roared, and defensive drones took their positions. The humans did not charge recklessly, nor did they wait passively. Every maneuver was precise, every tactic calculated. Alara's mind raced with possibilities, adapting to the changing positions of the Varkari ships. The aliens launched the first wave of attacks. Massive plasma beams streaked through space, aimed to overwhelm human defenses, but Alara had anticipated these strikes. Human ships darted, dodged, and countered with coordinated fire. Smaller strike teams used stealth technology to disable key alien units, forcing the Varkari to alter their formation mid-battle. The humans' unpredictability caused confusion, frustration, and doubt among the alien ranks. From the observation deck, Alara watched the chaos unfold with a sharp eye. Every move, every reaction, every error by the Varkari was catalogued and used to refine the human response. She directed reinforcements, shifted ships to reinforce weak points, and exploited openings in the enemy lines. Humanity's courage and creativity became a force the aliens had not anticipated. By the end of the first engagement, the Varkari had retreated slightly, regrouping for another assault. Alara's fleet was battered but unbroken. She had proven that humans could fight and win even when outnumbered and underestimated. As the sun rose over the planet, casting light on the battered but proud human ships, Alara stood at the command bridge, her gaze steady and resolute. She had faced the first test and passed. The galaxy's perception of humanity would begin to change. Those who expected her to flee would learn that Princess Alara and her people chose to fight. And this was only the beginning. The morning after the first encounter, Princess Alara moved through the war room with a calm determination. The battle had been intense, but her people had held their ground. Reports streamed in from the reconnaissance teams. Varkari losses were higher than expected, and confusion rippled through their command lines. While the aliens saw themselves as invincible, Alara saw their arrogance as a weakness to be exploited. Advisors crowded around her, trying to process the data as quickly as Alara issued new orders. She had no intention of waiting passively while the Varkari regrouped. Every delay gave the enemy time to recover, and humans thrived on rapid adaptation. "Commander Leora," she said, pointing to a holographic display showing the Varkari fleet's retreat, "we will not attack blindly. I want us to study their movements, identify every pattern, every predictable tactic. We will strike where they are weakest and use our strengths to full advantage." "Yes, Your Highness," Leora replied, her respect for Alara deepening with every word. Alara turned to Merrick, her chief advisor. "Prepare a team to simulate the Varkari command structure. I want every possible scenario tested. Humans may not have the same firepower, but we can anticipate, adapt, and respond faster than they expect." The council nodded, understanding that the princess was already thinking several steps ahead. While others worried about survival, Alara focused on turning vulnerability into opportunity. Outside the palace, the city of humans buzzed with energy. Engineers worked on repairing ships, upgrading shields, and improving communications networks. Soldiers trained relentlessly, learning to combine traditional tactics with new ideas inspired by Alara's strategies. Civilians contributed by managing supply chains, producing energy cells, and providing intelligence through planetary surveillance. Every human on the planet became part of the defensive effort. Alara watched all this with pride. Humanity's greatest strength was not technology alone, but the unity and creativity of its people. She remembered the stories of her ancestors, of humans who survived hostile planets, wild environments, and invaders with nothing but ingenuity and courage. That spirit flowed through every citizen, and she intended to make the Varkari see it firsthand. Days passed, and the Varkari returned with a larger fleet. Their capital ships were designed to intimidate, massive vessels bristling with energy cannons and reinforced armor. They believed that a show of force would break human morale. Yet when they approached the planet, they were met not with panic, but with precision and calculated resistance. Alara directed the planetary defense from the command bridge, her eyes never leaving the holographic projections of the battlefield. "Focus on their forward units first. Use decoys to split their formation. Prepare the orbital mines for deployment along the predicted retreat paths." Commander Leora nodded, issuing orders with precision. Human pilots darted through space, using the planet's gravitational fields to gain speed and surprise. Small strike teams, invisible to the Varkari sensors, disabled key weapons on enemy vessels, causing temporary confusion in the alien ranks. Alara's strategy was not brute force. It relied on adaptability, deception, and timing. Every human ship had multiple roles, ready to switch from offense to defense in seconds. Every crew member was trained to think, act, and communicate as a single organism, making the fleet unpredictable. The Varkari fired their first volleys, massive energy beams designed to destroy the human fleet instantly. But Alara anticipated their angles and timing. Human ships twisted and weaved, dodging with agility that larger alien vessels could not match. When a Varkari cannon locked onto a target, a human decoy ship would lure it into a trap, forcing the alien energy to dissipate harmlessly against a planetary shield. From the observation deck, Alara watched the battle unfold like a complex puzzle. She noted the smallest details, the lag in the Varkari command signals, the hesitation of a captain, the predictable rhythm of their attack waves. She began issuing new commands, repositioning her ships to exploit these weaknesses. "Focus on the left flank," she ordered. "Their flagship will move to support it. When they do, we strike their rear. Timing is everything." As the humans executed the maneuvers, the Varkari flagship suddenly found itself under coordinated fire from multiple angles. Their shields flickered under concentrated attacks from small strike teams, while the human fleet maintained a formation that allowed rapid movement and adaptation. Chaos rippled through the alien fleet, and for the first time the Varkari realized that humans were not merely reactive. They were anticipating, learning, and countering in real time. Amid the battle, Alara's mind was already planning the next move. She knew the aliens would not retreat easily. Their honor-bound culture demanded persistence. She needed a strategy that would force them to question their assumptions without resorting to unnecessary slaughter. "Prepare the tactical drones," she said quietly. They will simulate larger human squadrons, making the Varkari overextend. Keep our real fleet hidden, ready to strike when they falter. The drones launched into space, glowing like miniature stars as they mimicked human formations. The Varkari took the bait, diverting their capital ships to intercept what they believed were the main attack forces. In reality, the real human fleet was moving unseen, taking positions to cut off escape routes and disable critical support vessels. Alara's plan unfolded flawlessly. Within hours, the Varkari had lost several ships and suffered heavy damage. Their retreat became chaotic, with commanders issuing conflicting orders in panic. The humans, under Alara's guidance, pressed their advantage without overextending. Every maneuver was calculated, every strike meaningful. In the midst of the chaos, Alara remained calm. She spoke with her commanders through secure channels, adjusting tactics in real time. Her confidence inspired the fleet. Humans did not falter under pressure, they adapted. They exploited the enemy's mistakes. They acted with precision and courage. By the time the Varkari finally disengaged and moved back to regroup, the human fleet remained largely intact. Damage was manageable, morale was high, and the princess had proven something that no one outside the human world had expected. Humanity could fight and outsmart even the most feared galactic powers. As the enemy ships disappeared into the void, Alara allowed herself a small smile. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. She turned to Commander Leora, who was reviewing the fleet's status. "They thought they could intimidate us," Alara said quietly. "They believed we would panic. They believed we would flee, but they underestimated humanity, and that mistake will cost them dearly if they return unprepared." Leora nodded. "Your strategy worked perfectly, Your Highness." "They did not expect our speed, our coordination, or our adaptability." Alara's eyes turned toward the distant stars, where the Varkari had vanished. "This is only the beginning. We must learn everything we can about them. Every weakness, every assumption, every predictable behavior. Humans survive because we do not rely solely on strength. We rely on mind, heart, and courage. The galaxy will learn that soon enough." That evening, Alara walked through the city to observe her people. Civilians repaired damaged infrastructure, engineers tested new defense systems, and soldiers trained with renewed energy. She spoke with children, who admired her courage and determination, and with veterans, who offered insights from their experience. Everywhere she looked, she saw the spark of humanity, resilient, creative, and unyielding. Alara reflected on the lessons of the day. Humans were underestimated not because they lacked power, but because they were unpredictable. They survived not because they followed the rules of war, but because they rewrote them. And under her guidance, they would continue to surprise the galaxy. Back in the palace, Alara convened her council once more. Holograms displayed the damaged Varkari ships, enemy formations, and battle logs. She spoke with calm authority. "We have won the first major clash," she said. "But this is not the end. The Varkari will return. They will come stronger. And they will expect us to make the same mistakes again. We will not. We will adapt. We will improve. And when they strike next, we will be ready not just to defend, but to take the initiative." Her words resonated through the council. There was no fear, no hesitation. Alara had inspired her people not only to fight, but to believe in themselves. The human spirit, long underestimated by the galaxy, had found a symbol in the young princess who refused to flee. Night fell, and Alara returned to the observation deck. Stars stretched infinitely across the sky, silent witnesses to the ongoing struggle. She reflected on the day's events, on the courage of her people, and on the galaxy's misunderstanding of humanity. The Varkari believed themselves superior, yet they had been caught off guard by something they could not calculate: the ingenuity and resolve of humans under a leader who chose to fight. Alara's mind was already moving forward, planning the next steps. She would study the Varkari tactics, anticipate their moves, and prepare her people for the battles to come. The first clash had proven one thing: humans were not just survivors. They were fighters, thinkers, and creators of their own destiny. And with Princess Alara at their side, they would continue to defy expectations, one battle at a time. The galaxy had assumed the human princess would flee. Instead, she had led her people to victory. And the story of humanity's courage had only just begun. The galaxy had begun to take notice of humanity. Reports of the first victories against the Varkari fleet traveled quickly, and whispers of the young princess who refused to flee spread from system to system. But Alara knew the Varkari would not give up easily. They were cunning, prideful, and driven by a culture that saw retreat as dishonor. If humanity was to survive and thrive, she had to take the fight to them in a way that no one would expect. Inside the war room, Alara studied the star charts and intelligence reports. The Varkari were reorganizing, repairing their fleet, and preparing a larger, more coordinated assault. Alara's mind raced as she analyzed their strategy. She knew that a head-on confrontation could be costly, even with human ingenuity. Instead, she conceived a plan that would require precision, courage, and calculated risk, a plan that could turn the tide of the war entirely. "Commander Leora," Alara said, pointing to a cluster of enemy supply and command ships, "they are vulnerable here. Their leadership is concentrated, relying heavily on communication links between vessels. If we can disrupt that, we can scatter their fleet and weaken their morale." Leora's eyes widened. "Your Highness, that's extremely risky. Boarding or striking their flagship directly could expose our teams to capture or destruction." Alara's gaze was steady. "I know the risk. But the alternative is a prolonged war where we react to them instead of shaping the outcome. Humans survive because we take calculated risks, and we adapt faster than anyone else. This operation will require courage, creativity, and precise execution. We are humans. We can do it." The plan was set into motion. Elite human strike teams were assembled, each trained for months in both combat and unconventional tactics. Small, stealth-capable ships would approach the Varkari command fleet under the cover of asteroid fields and nebulae. Their mission: disable the communication network of the Varkari flagship, sow confusion, and allow the human fleet to engage on their terms. As the strike teams prepared, Alara briefed her commanders personally. She emphasized timing, coordination, and adaptability. "We are not relying on brute force," she said. "We rely on human ingenuity. Each team knows their role, but they must also be prepared to improvise. The Varkari expect rigid, predictable moves. We will be everything they are not." Night fell over the human planet, but the activity in orbit never ceased. Ships glided silently through space, their engines muted to avoid detection. Alara watched from the command bridge, her eyes scanning the holographic projections of the Varkari fleet. Every movement was calculated, every maneuver rehearsed in simulations and drills. The humans moved like shadows, their presence unseen, but their intentions precise. The first step of the plan was to position the strike teams near the outer perimeter of the Varkari formation. Using stealth technology and careful navigation, they slipped past patrols, approaching the flagship without triggering alarms. Alara's pulse quickened as she monitored their progress. A single misstep could compromise the entire operation, but the teams moved with discipline and focus that reflected months of preparation. Suddenly, a faint flicker appeared on the sensors. One of the Varkari patrol ships had detected a team. Alara did not panic. She had anticipated this possibility. "Deploy the decoy units," she ordered. "Draw them away and maintain radio silence." Tiny drones emerged from hidden compartments, simulating human movements across multiple vectors. The Varkari patrols were drawn toward the decoys, leaving the strike teams free to approach the flagship. Alara smiled faintly. The Varkari were clever, but their arrogance made them predictable. Humans thrived on using the unexpected against the expected. As the strike teams reached the command ship, they executed their plan with precision. Using specialized devices, they disrupted communication channels, sending false commands through the Varkari fleet. Confusion rippled instantly. Ships that had moved in unison began to falter, some firing on empty space, others overcompensating for phantom threats. From the command bridge, Alara observed the chaos. "Now," she whispered, "move the main fleet in." Human ships emerged from hidden positions, striking key points in the Varkari formation. Their attacks were precise, targeting weakened areas without overextending. The Varkari were thrown off balance, unable to coordinate effectively. What had seemed like an overwhelming force now struggled to respond. Amid the confusion, Alara's personal strike team boarded the flagship. They moved silently through corridors, bypassing guards and disabling critical systems. Every action was calculated to minimize confrontation while maximizing impact. The humans were not there to destroy recklessly. They were there to control, disrupt, and force the enemy to abandon their arrogance. Inside the command room of the flagship, Alara's team completed the final step, severing the communication link between the flagship and the rest of the fleet. Within moments, the Varkari commanders were isolated, their orders contradictory and ineffective. The alien fleet, once coordinated and confident, now faltered under the unexpected loss of control. Back in orbit, Alara directed the human fleet to capitalize on the chaos. Strike the disorganized units, but avoid unnecessary destruction. We are proving our strength, not spreading chaos for its own sake. Human ships moved with incredible coordination, exploiting the gaps and weaknesses in the alien formation. The Varkari tried to regroup, but the humans anticipated each move, cutting off escape routes and neutralizing threats without overextending themselves. Every maneuver showcased the ingenuity, discipline, and courage of humanity under Alara's leadership. Hours passed, and by the time the Varkari attempted a final retreat, their fleet had suffered significant setbacks. Ships were damaged, command structures disrupted, and morale shaken. The humans, on the other hand, had maintained cohesion, adapted to every challenge, and struck with precision when it mattered most. Alara's mind did not rest even after victory. She analyzed the engagement, noting areas where her teams excelled and where improvements could be made. Every battle was a lesson, and humanity's ability to learn quickly was one of its greatest assets. Returning to the palace, Alara was greeted by citizens who had gathered to watch the aftermath of the battle from orbital observation points. Their eyes shone with admiration and relief. Humans had won not because they were stronger, but because they were smarter, faster, and more adaptable. They had faced an enemy that expected them to flee and had instead seized the initiative. That evening, Alara convened her council. Holographic projections displayed the disrupted Varkari formations, showing where her strategy had succeeded and where future adjustments might be needed. "This is not the end," she reminded them. "The Varkari will recover. They will seek to retaliate. But we have proven our capabilities. They will think twice before underestimating humans again." Marek, her chief advisor, looked impressed. "Your Highness, the ingenuity of this operation is remarkable. You anticipated their every move and turned their strength into weakness." Alara shook her head gently. "It is not me alone. Every human involved contributed. Humans survive because we work together, because we learn, because we adapt. The galaxy thinks in terms of power and numbers. We think in terms of possibilities." Her words resonated deeply with everyone in the room. They realized that victory was not just about ships or weapons. It was about strategy, courage, and the ability to think beyond what the enemy expected. Days later, Alara reviewed intercepted communications from the Varkari. The messages revealed confusion, fear, and doubt among their leaders. They had expected humans to panic and flee, but instead, they encountered a species that outthought them at every turn. Alara allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The galaxy's perception of humanity was beginning to shift. Even as celebrations erupted across the planet, Alara did not rest. She continued to train her teams, analyze enemy tactics, and prepare for the next confrontation. Her mind was always forward-looking, considering possibilities that no one else might see. The Varkari had been shaken, but they would return, more determined than ever. Humans had to be ready. At night, Alara stood alone on the observation deck, gazing at the stars. She thought of the countless human worlds that depended on leadership and courage, of the ingenuity that had allowed humanity to survive in countless hostile environments, and of the battles yet to come. She knew that the war was far from over, but humanity had shown that it could stand, fight, and win against seemingly impossible odds. The Varkari believed themselves unstoppable, confident that humans would flee when faced with overwhelming power. They had misjudged the species, misjudged the princess, and misjudged the heart of humanity. Alara allowed herself a small, determined smile. The next phase of the war would be even more challenging, but humanity had gained a crucial advantage. The enemy now feared what humans might do next. And with Princess Alara leading the charge, they would continue to rewrite the rules of the galaxy. Alara knew that victory was not just about defeating the Varkari in battle. It was about showing that humans could think, adapt, and overcome challenges that no one else would dare face. Every engagement, every strategy, every decision reinforced a simple truth. Humans survived because they refused to surrender to expectation, to fear, or to convention. The galaxy had assumed that the human princess would flee. Instead, she had orchestrated a bold, daring operation that had left an enemy fleet in disarray and human morale soaring. The story of humanity's courage, ingenuity, and resilience was spreading faster than any message the Varkari could send. Alara turned from the observation deck, her eyes filled with quiet determination. The Varkari would return. Other powers in the galaxy would take notice. But humans were ready not just to survive, but to shape their destiny on their own terms. And Princess Alara, who had chosen to fight when all expected her to flee, was the spark that would continue to ignite the spirit of humanity across the stars. The galaxy was no longer whispering doubts about humanity. The bold actions of Princess Alara had turned fear into respect and disbelief into admiration. Messages from other star systems arrived daily, some cautiously offering alliances, others observing silently, waiting to see if humans could maintain their momentum. Alara understood the weight of expectation. The Varkari had been shaken, but they were still dangerous. Victory was never guaranteed, and survival demanded constant vigilance, creativity, and courage. Inside the war room, Alara studied the latest intelligence. The Varkari were attempting to regroup, sending fleets to neighboring systems to gather resources and allies. Their leadership was still fractured from the previous operations, and their overconfidence had been replaced by uncertainty. It was the perfect time to strike, not recklessly but decisively. Alara's mind worked swiftly, calculating every possibility, every potential risk, and every opportunity to secure humanity's position in the galaxy. "Commander Leora," she said, pointing to a holographic projection of the Varkari supply lines, "their resources are spread thin. Their fleet will not be fully reinforced for weeks. This is our moment to demonstrate that humans are not just survivors, but leaders of their destiny." Leora nodded. "Your Highness, how do you wish to proceed?" Alara's eyes shone with determination. "We will combine strategy, diplomacy, and precision strikes. We do not seek unnecessary destruction. We seek to secure peace by showing strength, unity, and intelligence. Humanity's victory will be proof that we are a force to be respected, not feared blindly." Preparations began immediately. Human engineers optimized fleet formations, scientists refined sensor and communication systems, and elite strike teams trained for coordinated operations that balanced risk and ingenuity. Citizens contributed by maintaining planetary defenses, supplying ships, and supporting logistics. Every human, from soldiers to civilians, played a role in ensuring the operation's success. As the days passed, Alara personally monitored each aspect of the preparations. She met with commanders to review strategies, consulted engineers about new defensive technologies, and spoke with diplomats to ensure that any engagement would not isolate humanity from potential allies. Her leadership was a blend of wisdom, courage, and empathy, qualities that inspired confidence in everyone who followed her. Finally, the day arrived for the decisive maneuver. The Varkari fleet had moved to intercept a convoy that humans had strategically positioned as bait. They believed they were striking a vulnerable target, unaware that the humans had prepared a multi-layered strategy. Alara stood on the observation deck of the command ship, her gaze steady and focused. "Maintain formation," she ordered. "Watch for openings and be ready to adapt at a moment's notice. Remember, humans survive because we anticipate, innovate, and act together. This is our strength." The fleet moved forward with precision. Human ships navigated asteroid fields, used gravitational assists, and deployed decoy units to confuse the enemy. The Varkari, expecting predictable human responses, were immediately disoriented. Their attacks missed, their formation faltered, and their morale wavered. Alara's strike teams advanced toward the central Varkari command ship, the same vessel that had been disrupted before. Using the knowledge gained from previous engagements, they executed a flawless approach, avoiding detection and positioning themselves for maximum impact. Every move was calculated, every action deliberate. Human ingenuity turned the tide before a single broadside was exchanged. Inside the Varkari flagship, confusion reigned. Alien commanders struggled to interpret conflicting sensor readings. Miscommunications spread across the fleet, and trust in their own strategy began to crumble. Alara's forces had not only disrupted their operations, but had also demonstrated the unpredictable brilliance of human thinking. From the command bridge, Alara directed the human fleet to capitalize on the disorder. Ships moved to strategic positions, cutting off escape routes and securing key points in space. At the same time, she coordinated with diplomatic channels to ensure that neutral systems observed humanity's actions as measured and purposeful, not reckless or destructive. Hours passed as the operation unfolded flawlessly. The Varkari, overwhelmed by the precision and creativity of the human strategy, began to retreat in disarray. Their fleet, once intimidating, was now fragmented and vulnerable. Alara's plan had succeeded. The humans had turned an anticipated conflict into a display of unity, intelligence, and courage. After the battle, Alara convened a council meeting to assess the outcome and discuss next steps. Holograms displayed the positions of the remaining Varkari ships, showing areas where future operations could secure lasting stability. Alara spoke with calm authority. "This engagement demonstrates more than victory," she said. "It shows that humans can shape the course of events, that we are capable of defending ourselves while maintaining principles of intelligence, adaptability, and restraint. The galaxy is watching, and our actions define how humanity will be remembered." Marek, her chief advisor, nodded. "Your Highness, the Varkari will remember this for generations. They underestimated not only your leadership, but the ingenuity and resolve of our people." Alara smiled faintly. "They underestimated humanity as a whole. That perception is changing. But our responsibility is not just to win battles. It is to ensure that victory secures a future where humans are respected, valued, and able to continue advancing." As news of the victory spread across the galaxy, other civilizations began to reconsider their assumptions about humans. Some sent cautious envoys, offering alliances and trade agreements. Others observed silently, curious about the species that had outwitted one of the most feared coalitions in the galaxy. Alara understood that perception was as important as action. Strength without wisdom could be dangerous, but strength guided by intelligence and ethics could redefine humanity's place in the universe. Back on her home planet, celebrations erupted. Citizens cheered for their fleet, their soldiers, and most importantly, for Princess Alara. Children waved flags and emulated the maneuvers of human ships in play, inspired by the bravery of their leaders. Alara walked among her people, listening to their stories, encouraging their hopes, and sharing in their joy. She understood that the spirit of humanity was more than tactics or technology. It was courage, resilience, and unity. That evening, Alara returned to the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly across the sky, and for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself a moment of reflection. She thought of the challenges that lay ahead, of the Varkari who would eventually attempt to recover, and of the countless other threats that the galaxy might present. Yet she also thought of the humans who had fought with ingenuity, courage, and determination. They had proven that humans were not only survivors but pioneers, capable of achieving the impossible when united under purpose and vision. Alara spoke quietly to herself, a vow carried on the wind across the mountains and oceans of her world. "The galaxy expected me to flee. They expected humans to bend before overwhelming power. We have shown them that expectation is not our fate. We fight, we endure, and we thrive." In the following weeks, humanity solidified its place in the galaxy. Trade routes were secured, alliances were forged, and systems that once doubted human capability now treated them with caution and respect. The Varkari, while still dangerous, were forced to rethink their strategies. They had learned that humans could not be intimidated, that cunning and courage could overcome sheer firepower, and that one underestimated species could redefine expectations across the stars. Alara continued to lead, always focused on the future. She emphasized the importance of knowledge, training, and collaboration. She inspired scientists to innovate, diplomats to negotiate wisely, and soldiers to embrace both courage and wisdom. Under her guidance, humanity grew not only in power but in influence, shaping the galaxy through intelligence, resilience, and ethical strength. One evening, as she gazed at the distant stars, Alara reflected on the journey. The galaxy had assumed the human princess would flee. Instead, she had led her people to victory, demonstrated unparalleled ingenuity and shown that humans could rise to challenges greater than themselves. Her leadership had redefined what it meant to be human in the cosmos. Alara knew that the path ahead would still be fraught with danger. There would be rivals who doubted, threats that challenged, and enemies who underestimated. But she also knew that humans had discovered something vital. Their strength lay not only in their ships or weapons, but in their courage, intelligence, and willingness to act when others faltered. The galaxy had changed its perception of humans, and humanity had begun to see itself differently as well. No longer just survivors, they were innovators, leaders, and a force that demanded respect. Princess Alara's choice to fight, to lead, and to challenge expectation had become the spark that ignited this transformation. As the twin suns set behind the mountains of her homeworld, Alara stood on the balcony, feeling the weight of responsibility and the promise of possibility. The galaxy had assumed fear, but they had found resolve. They had assumed weakness, but they had found brilliance. And in that brilliance, humanity had begun to carve its destiny among the stars. Alara whispered softly, her voice carried by the wind, a promise to her people and to the galaxy. We are human. We endure. We adapt. And we will continue to fight, not because it is easy, but because it is who we are. The galaxy will never underestimate us again. The stars shimmered above, silent witnesses to humanity's rise. And under Princess Alara's leadership, the human spirit, courageous and unyielding, continued to shine brightly, lighting the path toward a future where humanity would not only survive, but thrive, inspire, and lead. They expected the human princess to flee. She chose to fight.